Now let's look at the name and extension of the file, and I'm going to come back, as I promised to do, to the where attribute. This is the path to the file, and it starts from the root level of the disk. This is my hard disk here, which is called Hermes. And what I will do now is actually close this window and go back using the back button. And I'm going to open an info window so I can keep it open. In this case, I do not want the content to change as I wander around. The path is users/vtc/documents, and if I come back to the root level of my hard disk in column view, you can watch as I go through the hierarchy: users, VTC, documents. It keeps scrolling into place, and I'll move this aside. And in that path that ends at the enclosing folder for the file, what is selected is this one, which is Bridge 728. So the path to it starts from the root level of the hard disk, comes down to the enclosing folder here, which is documents, and then the name and the extension are what follow. The nodes that you pass through on that path are separated by slashes here. And the name and the extension are whatever you want. Mac OS X gives you the ability to hide the extension. So if you notice here, I can't see that it's a JPEG file. If I unclick that, then it shows up here. Nothing has changed about the underlying file. What has changed is simply whether or not the extension that is there will be shown. If I choose to hide it, it's hidden in the Finder, but it is still here in the info window, so I can see what it is. If I look at a file in another disk, and let me take an external disk here and choose Get Info, what you will see is that instead of starting at the root level of my disk, which was Hermes, and at the lowest level of Hermes was a users folder, instead of that, I'm starting in a folder called Volumes to the name of the disk, which is Ext80, an external 80 gigabyte drive, and then within that, let me scroll here, inside Ext80 I go to the library folder, to Automator, and then to the documents. So I go from Ext80 to library to Automator. If I were to look in the external drive for a comparable file inside the users folder, what I would get is a path, and I will open the Get Info window here, that instead of starting at users, which is at what we call the root level of my hard disk from which I started up, I'm going into Volumes, and then I'm finding the external drive and looking at its users folder and then going through it in exactly the same way that I went through the users folder on my own disk. So what we're doing is we're going for external drives into the volumes and then to the specific volume and then going into users, whereas for my own startup disk, I can just go to the root level, which is assumed, and navigate from there. What this means is that we now have to start looking in the next segment at the files and specifically the folders that are available throughout the system, and these are the important folders, there's only a few of them, in the operating system where things are located.